So let's take a look at the social skills and prosocial behaviors, stories, and dice games. So what these are little social stories about different characters, and each character is struggling with a different SEL skill. So for example, Andy is struggling with anger management. So there's going to be a little story about this character, and then a die that you can cut out and assemble, and then you're going to toss it with the group, and the kids can answer questions about the story. So the reason I did them this way is because a lot of times it's easier for students to understand and process their emotions if they can see them from like an outward perspective. So if you externalize their feelings to a fictional character or a character in a story, it's easier for them to analyze the situation and to even give advice and see problems and identify solutions, rather than if you're just talking to them about their own, for example, anger management struggle. So it's a really cool exercise, and the stories are fun. I tried to make the characters really relatable so the students can see themselves in the characters. So it's not, for example, in this Andy story, it's not a story about how Andy's just super angry and just like a bad guy. Instead, I make sure to start it off saying he has a lot of friends, he likes school, and then at the end, it's even saying that he, doesn't want to hurt others or hurt property, but it's hard for him to control his anger. So he's well-intended, great kid, because you don't want your students to feel like if they have one of these social emotional like flaws or struggles, that it is a reflection on who they are as a person. So how you can do this with your groups is each character has a different topic. So for example, Andy is anger management. So if you have an anger management group, during a session you can pull out this story and read it with the group and then answer the dice. So this is an example of a session, or maybe if your sessions are longer, maybe this is just like an icebreaker that you do or something you do at the end. You could even do these randomly with a lunch bunch as like a preventative thing. So maybe you're seeing a group of kids, but you're just kind of talking about social skills in general, not really working on a specific topic. Then you could pull these random stories each week, or pull the stories randomly each week. That way they can learn preventative strategies to use if they do find themselves in these situations. So Andy is anger management. And then there are black and white versions of the dice, so you can either print it in color, or you can print it in black and white and then color it in, or print it on colored paper. If you use like a cardstock, that works best for making a firm die. Or if you want, I've seen people, you can get these a die that have clear plastic sides, and you could cut these out and stuff the different questions in the sides. So get creative however you would like to do it. And if you're doing these digitally or virtually, you could have students roll a die at their house, or just assign each question a number and have students choose a number 1 through 6 to determine which question they're going to answer. So here's Fiona's story. She is struggling with friendship. And what I want you to notice here is that there's 6 questions. So 3 of the questions are a direct analysis of the story, so like a comprehension type question. For example, why do you think her friends don't like to play with her? How could she be a better friend? Or what advice would you give to Fiona? And then you can also ask them questions about their own personal situations. So, do you ever feel like Fiona? What is a friendship problem you have? So there's different types of questions here. And then Greg, his topic is growth mindset. Sophia is self-esteem. Stephen is self-control. And Sam is social skills. So again, you just read these with kids, and then they can answer the questions. There is also this poster that you could hang up in your office to show kids, or just bring it out. I don't know, it's just kind of a cute poster where you can see all the kids together with the different social skills. So let me show you what this looks like in action. So if you see here, I have the stories printed out, the poster, and then the different dies printed out there. And here's a close-up of one of them. So it was printed out, and then this die even printed in black and white and just kind of colored around it to make it more fun. So you can reuse these time and time again with your different small groups. So let's take a look at the mindfulness small group. So this group is designed for upper elementary and middle school students. It starts with the table of contents. So because this is like a really content-heavy group, it's over 80 pages, I have this table of contents that you can refer to so you can jump ahead to whichever area you need. And then we have our group rules. So I like to start every group with group rules and feelings check. So you want to establish the group rules during the first session. You can use these as a guide, or you can have students come up with their own group rules. So that's always a fun thing you can do together to really get them invested and feel like they're in control and have some ownership of the group. But of course, I like to guide students to the rules that I want them to have. So even as I hear their suggestions, I'm always trying to guide them back to these top 5 rules, more or less. And I like to always mention confidentiality, even with the younger students. I think it's super important to bring up to make everyone feel like it's a safe space to share. And you can even just say something as simple as, what you say in here stays in here, or use one of those cute posters to refer to each week. And then I love to start with a feelings check. So that's how you can have students practice sharing their feelings. So each week at the start of the group session, you want to go around and share how you were feeling and why. So you can model this for students, and you want to use a consistent sentence structure to make it easy for them to follow. So I am feeling blank because blank. And be honest, you don't want to always be, as the facilitator, being like, I'm feeling happy. I mean, maybe you are feeling happy each time, which is great, but I think it is important to be really honest and raw and candid about your emotions. That way the students feel like they can be honest about theirs as well. If you have students who are kind of struggling with this, definitely use the visual, and you can also have them use like a numbers system. They could choose on a scale of 1 to 10 if they're younger students or if this is tricky. But I really encourage you to try to get them to name a feelings word, and usually if they have the visual, they're good to go. And then I like to start all of my groups and end them all with a self-assessment. So this is the pre-group self-assessment, and you want to make sure to get their name and the date on this, or you could even do it in a Google form. That's a great option if you're meeting virtually, or even if you're not meeting virtually. It's just a great way to have all the data aggregated there. And then each week you're going to have an outline. So it's going to have mindsets and behaviors from ASCA, and then the objective, and then a quick little outline of what you're going to do. So because this is the first week, you're going to establish those group rules, like I mentioned, do a feelings check, the self-assessment, and then you're going to do an icebreaker, which is a discussion beach ball, then a poster. So many of the weeks we'll have a poster that you can review as a group, and I encourage you to print these out and hang them in the office if you're able to. That way your students can kind of review the past weeks. Then you have your main activity and then a journal. So week 1's a little busy because you're having to kind of establish the group rules, explain feelings check, and do a self-assessment. But each week will get easier as the kids are kind of used to, the routine of the group. So here is the first icebreaker game. It's a get to know you beach ball game. So you can do this a couple ways. For a beach ball, you cut these out and you can paste them on a ball, or you can just write them on the ball if you'd rather do that, and then erase it and you can reuse the ball, or just cut and paste. And then the students are going to toss the ball, and whoever catches it, wherever their thumbs land, they get to choose one of those 2 questions to answer. And then Jenga is another option. These are measured to be Jenga size, so you can cut and paste these on the Jenga game or another tower block game. And as you play with the students, they have to draw one out and answer that question. So that's really fun. And if you notice on the questions here, some of them are just general get to know you questions, like what would you do if you had $1 million, or what is something, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? And then there's also some that are specifically mindfulness related. So what do you want to learn about mindfulness, or what does mindfulness mean to you? And then here's the poster I mentioned. So this is just defining mindfulness. So I really encourage you to hang this one up or print out a copy and give it to the students. That way they can be reminded of the definition of mindfulness and some examples. And then the activity for this week, for the first one, is mindfulness charades. So you're going to have the kids take turns acting out different places or ways in which they can practice mindfulness while everyone else guesses. So it's kind of fun. So, for example, they could draw mindfulness with technology, and they're going to try to act out what it looks like to be mindful with technology, which is pretty challenging, as you can imagine. But then you're going to share the answer and then discuss which areas they feel like they're mindful in and which ones they need improvement in. And if you notice, each one of these, because this is the first session, each one of these ends up being a topic we talk about in a later week. And so there are those. And then a journal reflection. So they're going to answer what do they think about mindfulness, and then have you tried practicing mindfulness before? So week 2, same thing. You're starting with that group rules and feelings check. And then you have a guided meditation. So these guided meditations you will get, when you download this, you'll get this PDF, but you also get a zip file of these MP3s. So you play the audio clip for them to listen to, and then they're going to follow the instructions, and then afterwards debrief using these debriefing questions. So I believe there are 3 of those, and then the other ones are like a guided meditation script. So each week you're starting with that guided meditation practice. So they're literally practicing a mindfulness strategy in the mindfulness group. Really awesome. And then the first area we're focusing on is school. So these are the posters. This is mindfulness at school, what it looks like, and there's some examples. And then there are discussion cards. So you're going to cut these out, and the kids are going to take turns answering the discussion cards about mindfulness at school. And then there is a mindfulness at school bingo game. So there are 10 different bingo cards, and there are some call-out cards. So instead of having the bingo balls, you would cut these and put them in a basket or hat or whatever, and then you pick out one, and that's a different combination. And that one wraps up with journal reflection 2, which is related directly to school. How do you plan to be more mindful at school? Now, number 3 is mindfulness at home. So if you take a look at the outline again, you'll see we always start with group rules and feelings check. We always are starting with a guided meditation, reviewing the poster, and then we get into the activity. You have 2 activities, the icebreaker and the core activity. So these are pretty content-heavy sessions. They're designed for you to do them all in like a 30 to 45-minute session, but you could, break them up if you have to, if you have like 20 minutes with your group, but hopefully you have more. So in week 1, it was an audio meditation. In week 2, it is a guided meditation that you will read, and then you'll read those same debriefing questions from session 2. You're going to go use those debriefing questions every week. So I'll remind you of those. We'll go back here. How did you feel before we did this? How did you feel during? How do you feel differently now? Was it difficult to stay focused? What did you like the most? What did you like the least? And would you like to do it again? And hopefully they say yes, because you're doing it every week. And here is the poster about mindfulness at home, the discussion dice about mindfulness at home. So you'll see we have a pattern here. So I know, like I said before, there's a lot of content here, which is awesome, but don't feel overwhelmed because the kids kind of get into the rhythm and you get in the rhythm. And then there is a sticking to habits activity. So this one's fun. You can get like a big piece of butcher paper, or you don't have to have the butcher paper. You could just stick them on the board. But you have sticky notes, and the kids are going to write down 3 to 5 non-mindful habits they're currently doing at home. So an example would be like eating dinner while playing video games, homework while watching Netflix, kind of like any kind of multitasking, not really being in the moment, but rather being distracted kind of thing. And then they're going to share these with the group, and then they're balling them up and throwing them in the trash can. And then on sticky notes, they're writing replacement habits that are more mindful, and these you're going to stick on the board or on the butcher paper. So for example, instead of eating dinner while playing video games, it could be eating dinner with my family, or doing my homework in quiet before watching Netflix instead of doing my homework while watching Netflix. And you can keep these out so you can hold your students accountable. So that's fun to do in the future sessions. And you want to encourage them to stick to their new habits, kind of like a sticky note. And then the journal reflection is, of course, about being mindful at home. And then week 4, the topic is on being mindful with friends. So we go back to the audio guided meditation, and hopefully the kids are getting really into the guided meditations as you progress. Maybe in week 1 it's uncomfortable, it's new for them, perhaps it's all their first time. But as you do them each week, maybe they get more comfortable with them, and you can ask them, what do you prefer, the audio, or do you prefer when I read it to you? You could even have the students, on the ones where it's the script, the students could alternate or take turns volunteering to read it to the group. That could be a fun idea. And you can have them notice how long they're able to stay focused. So perhaps, in week 1 and 2, after 10 seconds they get distracted, but then maybe they make it 30 seconds, and maybe they make it 1 minute. These are all good conversations you can have, so feel free to use your own debriefing questions and conversations in addition to the ones that I provided. Those are simply merely a guide for you to use. And then here's the poster about being mindful with friends. And then we have a fun game. So for this one, you will need a deck of playing cards, and the kids are going to draw from the deck of cards to determine who's going to answer the question, and then they roll the die to determine what the question is. So if they draw an even number, the person who drew the card answers. If it's odd, the person to their left answers. And if it's a face card, they pass, except a king, and if that's the case, everyone answers. And then for this one, this is a really fun activity. It is a comic book. So there's a not using mindfulness and using mindfulness image, and the kids can read it, but then they just get to color it in. And this is while they're coloring it in, you can kind of discuss the different scenarios and how being mindful impacted the student involved. And then a journal reflection for week 4. And this one, instead of a question, it's actually intention setting. And you're asking them to set an intention for how they want to interact with their friends in a mindful way. And for this one, usually I like to keep the journal reflections private, but if the students want to share their intentions, that's an option. So moving on to week 5, you'll see our same kind of outline here. This one is the guided meditation script. Mindfulness in the community is the topic. So here's the poster. And then there is a discussion game about mindfulness in the community. So this is fun. These are all discussion. I just thought instead of doing discussion cards each time, it's more fun to kind of switch it up. So for this one, to determine who will answer the question, there are different categories. So for example, someone whose first name starts with an A would answer this question. And then if no one in your group starts with A, you could go to B and so on down the alphabet until you found someone. Or someone who was born in the summer, ask that question. Someone who's a pet cat. So these are general. I'm assuming someone in your group was born in a summer month, but they might not be, and that's okay. So you can modify these, to fit your group. But it's just a fun way to kind of randomly select who ends up answering questions. And then for this week, we're doing a role play. So the students are going to draw a card and then act out the scenario using role play. So there's 2 possible options. So they're going to flip a coin to see how they act it out. If they get a heads, they're acting it out mindfully, and if they get tails, they're acting it out not mindfully, or the opposite of mindfully. So for example, if they got the grocery shopping card and they got flipped heads, they're going to act out how to mindfully grocery shop. So that's when they're not rushing around the store. Maybe they're helping their mom. They're not looking at their phone or at a device. But if they got tails, maybe it would be that they were staring at their phone and they dropped their eggs because they weren't paying attention. Something like that. So this one can be really fun, especially with the opposites. And then journal number 5 has a question about being mindful in the community. Week 6 is about being mindful with technology. So there's a meditation script, a poster, and then this one's fun. It's a screen time schedule worksheet. So students can check screen time. If they have an iPhone, they can go into the screen time part of their iPhone and see where they're spending their time, or they can do the screen time schedule. So if you have my technology group, if you've been an Impact member and you see that already, or if you have it from my TPT store, you will see the same or pretty similar screen time schedule in there. So it's really great. Kids are they'll get a blank copy, but this is an example. They write down their daily schedule pretty much on a weekday, what it looks like for the most part, and then they're going to write down what kind of screen time activity they're doing. So perhaps they're not doing anything like in math or soccer practice, but maybe in science they're on the computer lab, which is definitely academic related and totally okay, but still screen time. Or maybe at dinner they're watching TV. So it's interesting throughout their day to see exactly how much screen time that they're using, have them write down the times. Of course, it's an estimate, but they can also use their phone to track it. And then you can see if they are surprised by their answer or not surprised. Before you do the activity, a fun thing you could do is have them try to guess how many hours they think it is. And then there is a discussion dice. So they're going to discuss screen time, rolling the die, and then just taking turns answering the questions. And there is a journal reflection for this week, asking them if they were shocked at their results, and then how they can be more mindful in the future. Week 7 is about mindfulness as a calm down strategy. So this one, we're going to do a audio meditation, and then we have a poster on using mindfulness to help you calm down. And then you're going to have the discussion cards. So students are going to take turns answering the cards. And then there is a traceable breathing activity. So for this one, you print this out, and they're going to breathe as they follow the spiral and breathe as they follow the star. Inhale and exhale. And so when they're finished, you can have them make their own breathing activity. So they can get a piece of construction paper and then kind of draw like a simple shape or an image that's meaningful to them. So for example, maybe they really like music. They could draw a music note. Or maybe they like the beach. They could draw sunshine, something like that. That's easy, kind of nothing too complex here. And then they can write their own places where they would inhale and exhale, and they can practice using it. You could also have the kids swap and try to use their neighbors. So that can be fun when they make their own. Then there's a journal reflection for number 7. And finally, week 8, this is where we're wrapping it all together. So, of course, you always start with the group rules and feelings check. And now we're doing another discussion beach ball or Jenga. So it's different questions this time, same game. So you can use your same ball, swap it out, or your same Jenga. But it's basically going through week by week and asking them how that they've been showing mindfulness with technology, friends, at home, and so on. There's also questions like, how have you become more mindful since you started the group? Do you think you'll do guided meditations at home? What's your favorite part? What's your least favorite part? So it's just a reflection. So I really like doing this activity. And then a fun one is they get to record their own guided meditation. So they have been learning about guided meditations and practicing them each week. So this time they can make their own. So you can have them use like GarageBand, QuickTime, or just a voice recorder on their phone. Keep it simple. Or it can get as creative and complex as they want it to. I know the kids are super familiar and quick on technology these days anyways, so they might surprise you with how cool they can make it. They can even add relaxing background music. So hopefully they feel ready to make their own because they've been practicing, and you can even review a previous one if they want to. But here's an outline they can follow. So just, they can start with a breathing exercise, intention setting, more breathing, a mantra, more breathing, and wrap it up with a visualization. So I think it's more fun to have them record the audio version, but if they want, they could write a script or kind of write the script as outline and then do the audio one. Now for this, it's more like homework is probably best, unless you have time or devices to do this in the session together. If not, you could kind of have them do it independently and then bring it back later. Then you have a journal reflection for week 8, and don't forget to do that self-assessment. So you're going to have them answer the same questions they answered before on the pretest, and you can date it or timestamp it by having them complete the Google form, and then you can compare their results. All right, I hope your students find that one helpful.